recording, and I have this reading from a new, I don't know how new it is, but it's a meditation manual called Spilling the Light by Teresa Soto, Meditations on Hope and Resilience. And for some reason, this one seemed like the right one for you, Emily. And if it's not, it's right for somebody. It's called To the People Who Have Mistaken Freedom for Liberation. To be free, you must embrace the breadth of your own existence without apology, even if they try to take it from you. You must know not that you can do whatever you want. You are not a kudzu vine eating entire hillsides for the purpose of feeding your own lush life. You must know instead that inside you are entire universes, milky blue, magenta, and gold, expanding. But to actually be free, you must know, and you must fight for the entire universes inside of everyone else. Being free is not a license, but a promise. So, knowing how you fight for everyone else, Emily, I thought that might be appropriate. And I'm lighting our chalice. And I am turning it over to you.
Well, thank you, Libby. That was beautiful. I really felt that deeply in my heart. So, good morning, everyone. What a daunting task this was, to tell the story of one's life without putting people to sleep or having them wonder, when will I ever reach the age of 30 in this story? So I thought I would try to tell this story in a series of vignettes with the hope of letting you weave the story together at some later time. I've always been attracted to people who are different, but full of energy and have a vision for the future that at the outside seems highly unlikely or very difficult to achieve. Earlier in the year 2020, I met Mimi Ong on a bus on December 31st, 2019, as we headed to the Rose Bowl staging area as to be part of the Pasadena 2020 float, celebrating the 100th year anniversary of women receiving the right to vote. She would ride on the float and I would walk with my wife and 98 other women following the float, all dressed in early suffragist clothing on a very warm and glorious California day. I struck up a conversation with Mimi because she had a sash that said Jet Propulsion Laboratory. The scientist in me had to find out why she was riding on the float and what she was up to. Mimi had a vision and a dream of flying the first hovercraft on Mars and had been working on it for over 10 years. Having been raised as by an immigrant single mom who was a very accomplished mathematician, she also intrigued me. So I said, "There's no atmosphere on Mars." She said, "There's a little one, and we're going to make this work." So last Sunday night, I wrote to Mimi Ong of the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, and I said this in an email: "Mimi, living vicariously through your successful flights has been thrilling. Just watched you on CBS 60 Minutes. It is truly incredible that you have had to pre-program every action and move on the planet. Your work is extraordinary. We're so proud of your team and having the privilege to have met you in Pasadena. Wishing you continued success in the years to come, Emily." She wrote back, "Hi, Emily. Thank you so much for your note and for cheering on Ingenuity's flights. Our whole team is super happy. And last Friday, even more exciting as Ingenuity transferred itself to a new airfield, moving to a new neighborhood on Mars. Very best regards, Mimi. We had the opportunity to march with some amazing women at the Rose Bowl parade. Dolores Huerta, incredible activist for immigrant women's rights. Nan Johnson, former member, 20-year member of the Monroe County Legislature and co-founder of the Susan B. Anthony Center at the U of R. And she was later named director in 1995. And Janetta B. Cole, the 7th president of Spelman College. The parade was 5 miles long. The sun was at our back with 8 beautiful Clydesdales marching behind us. We had left our rooms at 2 o'clock in the morning to line up at 4 a.m. to step off at 8 a.m. The crowds were continuously cheering for the float. It all felt extraordinarily surreal. It was advised that we wear Depends. We had to stay hydrated. I didn't, as they itched. Should have ignored the itch. It was a thrilling day, capped off by my wife's alma mater, Oregon, winning the Rose Bowl football game. During the judging time and the day before the parade, I had the opportunity to reconnect with the former president of Spelman College. It brought back memories. In 1996, another inspiring educator, Dr. Sylvia Bozeman, assistant provost for Spelman College, came to Kodak. Dr. Bozeman spoke of her vision to build and sustain a science and math program from which greater than 90% of the graduates from Spelman would attend graduate school. Dr. Bozeman asked that Kodak develop a strategic relationship with both faculty and students to provide the students with the opportunity to participate in R&D programs as juniors and seniors. In 1997, I joined the Spelman vertical slice team at Kodak and organized the yearly Kodak Day at Spelman, led the interview teams, and established the summer intern program for the next 6 years. This was a transformative relationship for me. Stepping onto the Spelman campus, of about 1,600 students in the fall of 1998, I could feel that there was something very different about the environment. Spelman was founded in 1881 by 2 American Baptist missionaries from Massachusetts, and later endowed by Spelman's sisters, one of whom was married to John D. Rockefeller. They came to set up the school to educate young girls who were free children of slaves following the Civil War. As I began to talk with students, I realized how passionate they were about their education, but more importantly, how important it was for them to be successful, young Black leaders. These young women had accepted the responsibility to transform their lives and be role models for those who came after them, and for all other Black women whom they encountered. What really moved me was their commitment to community. Through my interviews, I learned that they volunteered at least 8 hours a week to improve the community surroundings. They tutored students in grade school and high school, educated moms, worked in daycare facilities, community centers, and with children who were either physically or mentally challenged. These women were expected to take on leadership roles following their graduation. On one occasion, I had the opportunity to listen to a young woman who was going to challenge those expectations and become a teacher, not a leader in business, not a scientific researcher, but a teacher. And she was really admonished by some of the other students. She wanted to make sure that all young Black children had the opportunity to go to school and be taught well. I perked up. She shared a story of a young girl she had been helping in the community. And on one evening, she had encountered the young girl selling her body on a street corner in Atlanta. The Spelman student quickly picked her up and asked her why she was on the street. She told her mom could not work and she had to feed the family. the Spelman girls adopted her and helped her family, and she no longer had to walk the streets. In 1998, I was humbled to be named the key executive to Spelman College to continue this relationship. And in 2002, we were named the corporate partner. In 2002, 91% of the science and math graduates attending Spelman went on to graduate school. And Spelman became the #2 feeder school for the undergraduate African-American women attending medical school. So how did I get to be a scientist at Kodak? Well, here's the thread that ties us back to Mimi Young. President John F. Kennedy was going to send a man to the moon. But before that, the United States had to launch these rockets with space capsules successfully into outer space. I remember the first rockets falling off the launch platforms. I was a very impressionable sixth grader who was scared that we were going to lose this space race to Nikita Khrushchev. I asked my dad, what can I do to help us win this race? He said, you must do well in math and science. I took this completely to heart. The entire North Country where I lived had rocket launch pads. These missiles were to go over the poles and strike Russia should we be attacked. Plattsburgh was a strategic Air Force command base. The little girl of 11 wasn't going to let this happen. My life was the first gift of 4 children to my parents in 1947. As a first generation of immigrants born in this country, my mom, Polish Catholic, dad, Welsh Presbyterian, supported us and instilled at school was our most important job, with respect for the family and along with taking care of our neighbors. We lived in a small town outside of Canton, New York, called Rensselaer Falls on the Oswegatchie River. I was a very independent little kid, running all over the place, hanging upside down from just about everything. I attended school in a 1-room schoolhouse after running away from nursery school. What a great place to learn. The older students had so much more interesting lessons. School was easy, but I hated it. The boys got to do everything I wanted to do. When I was 6, we moved to Plattsburgh, New York, and I was known as a tomboy. And Mom was always disappointed with my appearance for special occasions because I always had something on my knees or scratched elbows or something. I really wanted to wake up and be a boy. They could play Little League, build soapbox racers, have great projects in Boy Scouts, take shop classes, and stay up, excuse me, and stay out late in high school. So naturally, I turned to high school sports as an outlet for my frustrations. My focus on sports led to my applying to Ithaca and Cortland to become a PE teacher. But as fate would have it, my mom was sick again, as she was many times while I was in high school. She would be in the hospital for at least a month at a time every year during my formative years, and I learned to cook, and the family learned to eat meatloaf over and over and over again. But I stayed at Plattsburgh State, where we lived, and I signed up for all the science classes I would need for my PE, but then I fell in love with chemistry, and I could play any sport I wanted to, so all was well. In my second year, I met a professor who literally overwhelmed me with eigenvectors and eigenfunctions. He danced around the blackboards with chalk, and he was so happy about science. I fell in love with his energy. In my junior and senior years, I did undergrad research with him. He had a vision of building the first multi-frequency electroparamagnetic resonance spectrometer. And no, I can't say that again fast. We continued our work together, and I graduated in 1972 with the first master's degree in chemistry from SUNY Plattsburgh and became an associate professor until we moved to Rochester in 1975. I met this guy while I was in chemistry class who always had big ideas and visions. And one was to buy a 150-acre farm, raising animals and having a huge garden. We did this while I was in grad school. We had an acre and garden, 6 cows and 6 pigs. We married, had our son Jason, and we had many friends and guests at our home all the time, helping us with the farm. After Jason was born, he couldn't tolerate mother's milk, cow's milk, or soy's milk, so I bought a goat and learned to milk it. The cow's milk sustained him and changed his life until a husky climbed over the fence and killed it. This is probably the first time I ever became hysterical over life's unfairness. Following my husband's acceptance in chemical engineering at the University of Rochester, I began my life as a nuclear magnetic resonance spectroscopist at Kodak. I had no idea what this was, but they thought I could do it because EPR and NMR had something to do with magnetic resonance. My undergrad was in inorganic chemistry. Kodak made organic chemistry molecules. I had a 3-year-old son and a husband in grad school who was only seen occasionally on Sundays. What could be the problem? I was sure I could learn what I needed to know to be successful, although my boss felt I would never make it. The work was captivating, and the educational training was exceptional. I became a sponge. My marriage began to become strained from the constant separation due to the late hours in grad school, and my husband's anger issues became more explosive. The relationship would not improve upon his graduation and entering the workforce. It was unknown to me then, but the cause of this explosive nature would be part of an unknown rare disease, myotonic dystrophy, which we deduced he had as a result of my son and grandson being diagnosed with the disease in 2015. I turned to sports with women as an outlet to get those endorphins flowing. Was also moving up the ladder at Kodak as a result of an idea I had to transform the way we analyze data to determine the structure of organic molecules. Kodak had very unique molecules because they had to absorb energy in a very particular way. We were always looking for new molecules that would be able to absorb energy in a very narrow spectrum. What if we could take our data and use it to predict current structures, but more importantly, predict new structures with unique properties? Having just heard a visionary talk on the power of artificial intelligence using large data sets, a new approach was born. After being named lab head for molecular spectroscopy, we had access to data from all over the world in our different laboratories. This expedited the data gathering. We used robotics to both run our experiments more quickly, and we had AI to examine our data. Now we could predict new molecular structures without having to try to develop these molecules over and over again in the laboratory. My scientific life was exciting, but my home life was made more complicated by my travel. And in my late 30s, I stumbled over my sexuality, and now I was forced to confront my marriage on 2 fronts. I really thought I could continue my marriage and submerge my sexuality, but I could not. Now, what was I going to do? Get a divorce, come out, get fired, lose custody of my son? So naturally, I began a long-distance relationship with an old gay friend in Boston and lived 2 lives for 3 years. I ended my marriage in 1988. My partner ended our relationship in Boston, and I called my parents. Coming out to my parents was comical and sad. Dad asked, "Do you have AIDS?" Mom said, "I'm disappointed in you and I don't like it." "No, Dad, I don't have AIDS." He was relieved and said, "I love you." And Mom said, "I'm sorry about all this." And I said, "Mom, this is who I am." But Mom was forever disappointed in me. My son said he really knew and was very supportive. When he met friends in high school that were struggling with coming out, he would invite them home to talk with me. My brothers and sisters were loving and compassionate as I traveled my journey of coming out. My brother was willing to forgo a job with government clearance if I thought it would affect my career. I told him to share everything he knew. One to go, my boss. Earlier in the month, my boss had shared that he had sent his son to their church in Utah to have him healed and cleansed of his feelings for men. With great trepidation, I walked into his office and shared my story. He said he was glad that I told him the truth and that it wasn't going to affect my position as the assistant director. Soon I flew to Vancouver Gay Games and met a gay man from Kodak. He had a vision that it was time for all gay people and that they should be treated equally at Kodak and there should be no more corporate closet. Working closely with about 20 other gay and lesbians at Kodak in hidden rooms and in unannounced times, we developed the business plan for the gay and lesbian network at Kodak called the Lambda Network. This journey held the promise to open one door after another in my growth as a leader and as a compassionate member of the community. As a result of the vision of these brave colleagues, we held the first educational gay and lesbian event for management. George Fisher was the CEO. He affirmed us. He celebrated our journey, and he thanked us for our courage. Mike Morley, Senior VP of HR, testified on Capitol Hill in support of the Employment Non-Discrimination Act. He was the first American corporate executive to actually speak on Capitol Hill. And in addition, he sanctioned the provision of domestic partnership benefits for both gay and straight couples at Kodak. Kodak became a role model, along with JP Morgan Chase, IBM, Xerox, Levi Strauss, 3M, and others as leaders in workplace equality. Due to our strength and recognition, I was given the opportunity to develop and attend the first executive LGBT program at UCLA, where I met my first trans advocate. The end of the 20th century brought many changes. My mother entered care in a nursing home. My dad moved in with me. My partner was diagnosed with breast cancer, and I was named co-director of the new Imaging Materials Research Lab. What a year. The year 2000 was transformative. Both of my parents died, and my son was married. And within 5 years, I was blessed with 2 beautiful grandchildren. During the next 5 years, I was introduced to some of the most creative, bright, imaginative, diverse group of scientists ever to be assembled in one division in the research labs. We were working on coatable electronics that would facilitate the invention of coatable displays. We imagined the transport of 3-dimensional live images so you would never miss your child's soccer game or first concert. I was like a kid in a candy shop. This couldn't get better. Kodak continued to support the work to establish LGBT workplace equality within the Fortune 500 companies. Our keynote speaker at that first management event was Elizabeth Birch. She was senior legal counsel for Apple. She had just successfully established domestic partnership benefits at Apple and was the catalyst for George Fisher and Mike Morley doing the same for Kodak. Elizabeth left Apple with the vision of creating and leading the largest LGBT national organization shaping the future for all LGBT people in the world and became the director of the Human Rights Campaign in Washington, D.C. Elizabeth knew something few others know. Corporate America shapes and leads on public policy, not government. Elizabeth created the Human Rights Campaign Business Council with senior members from Raytheon, 3M, JP Morgan Chase, IBM, Kodak, and the founder of the Equality Principles. In 2001, I was honored to be selected as a member of the council. We initiated the Corporate Equality Index, the recognized national benchmarking tool for LGBTQ equality in the workplace. In its first year, 13 companies received a perfect score. Proudly, Kodak was one of those. Today, 1,142 companies participate in that survey, with 91% of those companies offering one transgender benefit. 767 earned a perfect score of 100. During my 13-year tenure on the council, I had the privilege of meeting Donna Rose, a transgender woman, originally Dan Rosen, a photographer from Rochester. I was transfixed by her courage, bravery, as she shared her story of change. Over 100 operations, loss of friends and family, and setting up a home for compassionate care for the members of her newfound community. Her story led me to co-writing the first HRC guide for employees transitioning in the workplace. We invited her to educate our HR professionals at Kodak on trans advocacy, and she was very, very warmly received. In 2008, Matt Haig and I co-chaired the Empire State Pride Agenda dinner in Rochester. Reverend Jen Crow was a member of that committee. I looked to her for clear guidance on many fractious issues, including religion and homosexuality. In the following year, having struggled with ending my relationship of 13 years and feeling lost, I stopped to visit Jen. She suggested that I join a new group called Wellspring. Wellspring and my early Soul Matters group, along with a wise spiritual director, allowed me to explore my deepest pain and face my toughest challenges with compassion and grace. My Wellspring family has held me for over 10 years. In my discouraged times, and has celebrated my most ambitious accomplishment, Jen was right. This is where I needed to be. About 20 years ago, the last chapter of my life, unbeknownst to me, began at the home of Joy Collins during her annual equinox celebration. I was introduced to a young clergywoman who would later become my wife. Some 10 years later, I was very impressed with her leadership of a panel on homosexuality and religion and asked her out for coffee. She accepted. We talked. Rather, she talked about her vision for the Susan B. Anthony House. In my mind, I was thinking, I have chaired many not-for-profit boards. How is she going to pull this off? I found her exceptional business mind very attractive, along with her sense of humor and love for her dad and family. So I needed to continue this relationship. And I wanted to do it in a careful and purposeful way. So I took her to the world of my childhood in my little red 1987 BMW midlife crisis red convertible. We drove to Saranac Lake in the autumn and stood at the top of ski jumps and rode the chairlift to the top of Whiteface Mountain. I shared my many stories of skiing here every weekend while in high school with my friends and my dad. The day was filled with billowy white clouds and the crisp smell of autumn. I fell in love. We took a trip to Hawaii and she proposed. She proposed, not me, on the lanai. I accepted after telling her she had to realize this was really big. Marriage is really big. I called my son, Jason, and asked for his blessing. He says, Mom, of course. In the following week, as part of my work with ESPA, the Empire State Pride Agenda, we presented the business case for marriage in New York State, along with Xerox and many other business people and the mayor of Rochester on the City Hall steps. Following this event, Deborah and I were interviewed by a local news network looking for a couple who would like to be married soon. Having not even told our closest friends yet, and Deborah not having told her board, we announced that we would be married in either Canada or Massachusetts in the coming year. The following year, same-sex marriage was passed in New York State. We were married by three clergy, the Reverend Ann Cansfield from New York City presiding, Reverend Tina Simpson, and Reverend Rod Froman at Third Presbyterian Church. Third could not sanction same-sex marriage, but allowed us to use the church. We had a beautiful day filled with family and many, many friends. During these past 10 years, I have been blessed with the love of this wise, visionary, compassionate woman. Deborah Hughes is a woman who can tell a story and hold you captivated in the palm of her hand, make you laugh with her imitations of barnyard animals, and she always wins at word games. She's the captain of our sailing vessel, both at home and on the water. During the 3rd year of our marriage, I was blessed by her tender smile and gracious heart holding me while I dealt with the most difficult challenge I've ever dreamed of encountering, my son and my grandson's diagnosis with myotonic dystrophy. She supports my role as my son's sole caregiver and tutoring my grandson about 4 hours every day during this pandemic. We dance together in the kitchen, we sing, we spoil our dog, we work on the boat, we work in the garden, we celebrate our friends, but most of all, we celebrate the love we have found together as a married couple. Thank you for listening.
Emily, what a gift you are. I have known you for so long, and I didn't know so much of that. I'm going to take the spotlight off you.
Yay.
And go back to gallery view so that people can ask you questions. But before I let people ask questions, I just have to tell you that I didn't know that you were born on the shores of the Oswegatchie. Cass Eldridge may remember this, but at my dad's memorial service, she played the one song that he wrote, which was "By the shores of the old Oswegatchie, where the mosquitoes make you scritchy, scratchy." That's the entire song. So I just had to share that. But I would love to have people ask questions or find other points of connection. I mean, one of the beautiful things about Elder Tree is that there are these amazing points of connection that you never knew about. So